Welcome, everybody, to today's session on um, one of our lived experience sessions on caregivers' creative expression of the dementia journey. To start today's session, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the Alzheimer's Society of BC operates on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of Indigenous peoples in all regions of BC. Today, myself and our four guests are presenting from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, the territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Kikite First Nations, and of the Snuneymuxw, Snuneymuxw, and Chemainus people. And apologies for my inevitable mispronunciations. We make these land acknowledgements in recognizing that our vision of a province whereby people living with dementia feel acknowledged, welcomed, and included will only be possible if they have access to resources and supports that are barrier-free, which includes being free from any form of racism. And on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my slides so that I can introduce today's presenters. I will be flipping in and out of the slides today to allow you all to both see the art that our presenters have chosen to share, and as well to give you an opportunity to see the presenters more clearly when they share. So on that note, I'm stopping sharing. Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Kelly. I'm the Provincial Coordinator, Program Operations for the Alzheimer's Society of BC, and I'm today's host. And I am delighted to introduce today's presenters. And I will also just take a moment and point out that there are links related to each of our presenters in today's helpful resources document. All right. So Herb, I'm going to start with you. Herb was the almost sole caregiver to his wife, Anne, over a period of about 13 years. The experience turned Herb to poetry by way of coping and digging out of depression. He wrote a book of poetry as a result called Chasing a Butterfly, a journey in poems of love and loss to acceptance. He was a judge at an international English poetry competition in 2017 and is a regular blogger. Hello.
Hi.
Nanaimo poet and writer Kamal Parmar has been passionately involved in writing for the last 20 years. Her genre is poetry, and she does have a few books to her credit. Kamal believes in the healing power of poetry and says that poetry helped her to untangle the emotional knots of being a dementia caregiver to her mother. Currently a member of the Writers' Union of Canada, the Canadian Authors Association, and Haiku Canada, Kamal is also the current Poet Laureate of Nanaimo. Hello to Kamal.
Hi, everyone.
Cindy Gierak is a care partner who's been supporting her husband Lester since he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2019. Cindy and Lester were invited to be honorees for this year's IG Wealth Management Walk for Alzheimer's for Burnaby and New Westminster. They are both active in their community's dementia-friendly friendly dementia cafe, seniors memory club, and caregiver luncheons. Cindy says she loves walking outside in nature and finds joy and calm in creating art and reading children's picture books from the library. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, Lorraine de la Morandier has many years of experience with dementia caregiving, having supported her sister from afar as her sister helped her mother with dementia in Ontario. Lorraine then assisted her uncle-in-law with his dementia journey and now is again long-distance caregiving for her sister in Ontario, who now has dementia herself. Lorraine was formerly an art therapist and is currently a member of the Delta Music Makers community band. She finds using the create to cope approach is vital to enabling her to successfully navigate the complexities of dementia caregiving. Hello, Lorraine.
Hi, everyone.
And welcome to you all. I'm so pleased that you four have joined us to present, and welcome to all of you who have joined us today. So, want to set the stage for today's discussion. So, can you tell us about each of you, tell us about your art or your poetry and how you got started. Cindy, I'm going to start with you.
Over the past 10 years, I have enjoyed finger painting, watercolor painting, acrylic painting, and adult coloring books. When I retired 10 years ago, I was looking for something fun to do. In the children's library, I found a book on finger painting, and that was something anyone could do, even me. So I went to the dollar store and I bought some finger paints and glossy, giant-sized finger painting paper. It was so much fun to feel the cool, squishy paint on my hands and then run my fingers and hands all over the slippery paper. It was relaxing and just plain fun. And what a beautiful creative mess of swirly colors I was able to create on the paper. And after that, I started making finger and hand creatures that were shown in a children's library book. And I felt like an artist. In 2019, shortly after my husband Lester was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease, we became a part of a University of British Columbia research project called Living Well with Dementia to the End of Life. It consisted of a small group of people living with dementia and their caregivers. Over a period of several months, we created poetry, collages, masks, paintings, and photography. And we really had fun being a part of these activities. We made new friends, we learned from each other, and we built a foundation of support. I believe that the link to the virtual art exhibit from this research project is in the helpful resources for today.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Cindy. So what about you, Herb? How did you get started with your poetry?
Well, I've almost always dabbled in poetry.
Oh, I think you've got the mic on twice, or maybe your speakers and your headphones are on.
That's me?
Yep, it
Yeah, it
seems to
sounded
have
like
fixed
somebody else
itself.
was speaking over me.
Yeah, nope, go ahead.
Yeah, I was always trying to write, and I found when I look back, I had screeds of poetry of varying usefulness. But when my wife was diagnosed as Alzheimer's and began to sink very deeply into Alzheimer's, I sank with her, but into depression, and then I was no use to her, and I was no use to me. So I got a lucky break. The Alzheimer's Society came to town with a 6-week training course on how to learn about Alzheimer's. But then we met in a conference room, a huge conference room with a gigantic conference table, and we filled it to overflowing. Must have been about 40 of us there. And you can imagine going around that conference table one by one saying who we were and who was our Alzheimer's person and what stage we were at. I seized up. I knew none of that stuff. So next week's session, I was determined to do something about it because that was so embarrassing. And I turned to the world of poetry, and I wrote an unrhymed couplet. So I blurted that out to the conference people, and I got such an overwhelming, warm welcome that it just overcame me. And the encouragement was so great that, as I say, it was their mistake for encouraging me, because I have not stopped, and I have become a fairly accomplished poet now. And in fact, just as a side note, next month, the Writers International Network is honoring me and 4 others, and I am going to be presented as a distinguished poet.
Oh, wonderful, Herb.
So poetry has become my world, and it saved me from depression. It just lifted me right out of there. So
Wonderful.
then I started working seriously with poetry, and I have not stopped.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's what got me over the hump.
I know that we're gonna look at some. You're gonna have a chance to tell us more and share some of your poetry. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Kamal, would you like to share how you got started with poetry?
For sure. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to thank the Alzheimer's Society of BC to have me here. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be able to share my travel journey when my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and how I fought and I won, I should say, just by writing poetry. So I've been writing since the last 20 years, and I've got a whole lot of poetry books and one creative nonfiction. My latest book, it's actually my 5th book. On my 6th book has already been published. This is Still Waters, and this is about the dementia journey, and I've written it from different perspectives. When my family member was diagnosed with dementia, which it was like, a curveball, and I said, how am I going to surmount this? So I was already into writing, and I felt that it more I wrote, it gave me some sort of a calmness and an inner stillness. So I started compiling these poems, and by the end of it, I felt relieved, I felt hope, and I felt a certain, it, like I said earlier, it takes out the emotional kinks, and I was able to accept and have hope and to fight it off. So poetry has been as a healing tool, has always been my kind of a beacon of hope to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. And then last but certainly not least again, Lorraine, what about you? How did you get started with art?
Well, I started in my late 40s when I was studying to be an art therapist. A component of those studies, was to experience art therapy from the perspective of the client. In doing that, I really came to appreciate the value of expressing your emotions through creativity. And I've been doing that basically ever since. I like to call it creating to cope, just to dispel the idea that one has to be an artist or artistic, because anyone can do this, really. It has been crucial to my well-being and to my ability to deal with the various stages of Alzheimer's. Excuse me. I use photography and just about anything that I can find to express my feelings. And though I'm drawn to the outdoors and anything I can find outdoors, I'm First Nations French, so you'll see that I draw on that heritage background in my work. Basically, that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Ah, great. So that gives a little bit of insight into how each of you got started. And So the next section, I want to spend a little time talking about, so how has your art or poetry helped you to cope with your experience of dementia? So this session is caregivers' creative expression of the dementia journey. So let's dig into that a little bit. And Lorraine, because you were last on the previous question, I'll start with you.
Okay. So I'll explain the benefits as I go through and talk about my work. But overall, I'd say when I create my feelings, it releases tension and it makes space for me to feel happiness in the midst of the grief and sadness. I can talk my way through my feelings, but when I create my feelings, I get under those words to the raw areas inside me where feelings tend to, or I think they hide out. So when I can see the pain, I can't ignore the pain. And the fear that I have decreases. So I usually recognize my feelings to start. But if I can't recognize those feelings, I just take one item and I start, and I just trust that in the process of creating that I will get to where I need to be. So in this piece, I was feeling heavy grief and the burden of having to think and do all that was necessary for myself and my sister. So I found a deer skull in my sister's workshop, and it represents death and grief and the gradual loss of my sister. I instinctively looked for something to hold it, and this tree was perfect to withstand the weight. As I draped the heavy chain around the tree, I felt and saw the weight I was carrying. And I just can't ignore the extent of the burden on my shoulders when you see it. So this was the first step in my coming to terms with my feelings. The next piece I added was wooden cross beams from my sister's shop. And this is balanced. This is there to express the balance that I had to sustain. The upper circle, not the one that I see on my screen, but an upper circle I added to emphasize the weight. I slipped this onto the chain, but it also stood out to me as a metaphor for wholeness. So just a little hint of strength coming to me. I found another circle wrapped in sweetgrass by my sister. This is a medicinal plant that we use that's used in healing ceremonies. And when I hung it in the center of the larger circle, I had a sense of doubling up on the strength and wholeness, a sense of completion, really. Cedar is a medicinal plant that's used in healing ceremonies, and I hung this from a wooden crossbeam to help me through this. I was spending 6 weeks with my sister at the time and heavily immersed. The eagle feathers to me represent endurance. So I sat with this piece several days on and off when I could, and I felt a real sense, a real peacefulness, strong and rejuvenated. And at later times when I wasn't able to visit my installation, I'll say, I was able to envision it and really draw on the power of it. Like it was like timely medicine when I needed it. So in the second piece that I'll talk about, I was feeling profoundly sad, alone, beaten, depleted, when I created this figure of myself out of Fimo. I placed myself in this log and immediately rejected it because I was feeling so fragile and so exposed. So I searched for something else, and I found this burl in a collection of my mother's things from nature. When I placed myself inside this burl, I felt a real sense of cocooning, like a warm hug, and I felt safe. So I brought it up to a patch of wintergreen that grows on the rocks behind my sister's. We use the wintergreen as a soothing drink, but it also is like a medicinal plant in that you can use it to take the edge off a headache. So I took the piece in at night, and in the quiet of my room, I began to think of the figure as that of my sister, and how fearful she must be, and vulnerable and feeling isolated and alone. And I felt deep compassion for her, but also for myself. The next day, I found this twine, and I wrapped myself in the twine with the idea of expressing my immobilized state. But to my surprise, I felt soothed by wrapping myself. So I felt a sense of empowerment and ability to take care of myself. I placed cedar there under my head. Mightn't be that visible, but it's there for healing and strength. The next day I found porcupine quills in my sister's workshop, and I threaded 2 of them in the twine to represent defense and protection. I placed the white feather there as to give it a bit of softness, but it immediately took on a look and feel of a warrior. So I tried setting myself back, or the burl and myself back in the wintergreen patch, and a hollow burned out log. But when I inverted the burl in the hole in this log where a burl once was, but had fallen off, I felt like I had come full circle. My sister and I were where we needed to be, really. So I felt acceptance then and a real sense of calm. Before I returned to Vancouver, this all takes place in Ontario, and before I returned to Vancouver, I tucked the burl and myself in my mother's collection of all things natural. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, just going to stop the slides for a minute and come back to us. Lorraine, I particularly appreciated your description of how your art pieces over time both reflect and help you work through your emotions and experiences. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, thank you. They do take time over days sometimes.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes. Thank you.
Cindy, what about you? How has your art helped you to cope with your experience with dementia?
Well, after my husband Lester was first diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, my mind was consumed with thinking about dementia. And art helped me to live in the moment and to stop thinking about dementia so much. It was fun, it was relaxing, it quieted my mind, helped me to slow down and take time to just breathe and live a simpler life. And when I would do my art, it was kind of like I'd forget all about everything all around me and go to like a seventh heaven. And so it gave my mind a great rest. Our living room now looks like a kindergarten with all my colorful, happy, and whimsical art hanging on the walls. And it's uplifting, and it helps our hearts and minds to feel really cheerful. Art is also a way for me to express myself, to encourage myself, and to even set goals for myself. And now I want to share a few pieces that I've done. The autumn tree I did with finger paints, just using my fingertips. Can you imagine doing something like this yourself? It's really a lot of fun. And the mask was a UBC research activity. The mask is colored in flower stickers from free address labels that came in the mail. And her eyes and mouth were cut from clip art pictures on the internet. On each paper sunbeam, I wrote the things that I want to remember to be as a caregiver. Like I want to be agreeable and calm and kind and to smile and be loving and thankful and so on. Sometimes I need to be reminded about these things. And the next one is a collage, which was another UBC research activity. This one is of a tree growing by a stream. Being a caregiver, I know that my roots need to be continually nourished and watered by staying close to God and friends, church, family, our medical community, support groups, and nature. And when I am, then I can be loving and joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, good, faithful, gentle, and have self-control. The water is made from cloth. The greenery is made from real moss. The roots in the stream are real plant roots. The tree is made from dried, fallen cedar needles, and the stickers help to bring some life to the collage. This is a watercolor painting from the book, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. I printed out coloring book pictures from the internet, traced them onto watercolor paper, and then tried to make the watercolors look the same as they do in the original book. I actually did 33 pictures. That's how many pictures were in the book. And so I created my own book. These are ducks, and they were done just using printer paper and acrylic paints from the dollar store. I used a children's book as my reference, and they are now hanging on my living room wall. And it also helps me with this sign saying, God, please help me to keep all of my ducks in a row. If I can do that, then I am calm and at peace. So it's another very good reminder for me. The next one, these are also on my living room wall and are from adult coloring books. And they're just done with children's Crayola felt tip markers. And they're just lots of fun to do. And there's such a variety that you can buy in the stores. You can choose the kind that you like. And I bought some colored paper, kind of like a frame to put around it. And when you do that, it really makes your pictures just kind of pop. And it's really fun. And this one, Living Well with Dementia. I recently made a poster for our dementia-friendly cafe using a presentation board, wrapping paper, and alphabet stickers. And they're all from the dollar store. Printed on address label stickers are the many things that a person can do to help them to live well with dementia, such as join support groups, play games, stay active, stay calm, be brave, be yourself, so on and so forth. At the very bottom, this is something that Lester and I have put at the bottom of our emails when we send them out. If you have dementia or support someone who has dementia, reach out. You're not alone. Be brave. Do not be afraid. Your life is not over yet. You can live well with dementia for many years. Contact the Alzheimer Society. Learn as much as you can about dementia. Most of all, get connected with others who are on the same journey. Lester and Cindy Geracker.
Thank you very, very much, Cindy. That's wonderful. So I see that somebody said in the chat just how fun and cheery your art is. And I really appreciate that. There is a lot of joy and encouragement in your pieces.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Herb, back to you. You talked a little bit at the beginning about how returning to poetry helped to bring you out of depression. Can you tell us a little more about how poetry helped you cope with your experience with dementia?
Yeah, apart from the connection with the Alzheimer's people and the support group. The support group was very, very important. And I wound up reading a poem to them after every meeting. So I was building my portfolio without even knowing it. And I was blogging like 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because there was so much there. And that was a balm to me. It was a way forward. It was a way to cope and overcome those fears that I'd had and the ineptness that I had displayed. So I owe everything to poetry, and it is a very bittersweet journey because my wife Anne had to go through that torture for me to be freed up and become a poet, and with a book, Chasing a Butterfly, and working towards more books, and being a successful blogger on Facebook. It was healing, it was therapy, and it worked. Thanks.
Lovely. Herb, would you like to share a couple of poems?
I
We
would,
had talked about that. Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm going to share a screen just for a moment, because just so the folks in the audience know, we decided that it would be nice for you to have the opportunity to read yourself as Herb is reading his poem. So here we go.
Yes, thank you so much. The poems speak for themselves. These 2 poems were turning points for me when I stopped doing what you might call amateur poetry, but it was working, and transitioned me into writing form poetry. And the first one is called She's Lost. She's lost all her nouns, she's misplaced them all. We've searched for them, for she talks with a scrawl. But names are all blank and things are hand signs. Then it all proves futile and we end up with sighs. She's lost all her verbs. We've looked everywhere. She's checked all the books, but her verbs aren't there. We've looked in drawers, we've looked on shelves. We've even looked inside of ourselves. We ask her what she means, and she tries to tell. She searches her brain, she tries to spell. She knows it's all in there, it's all sealed in a box, but she has no key and her tongue trips as she talks. She's lost all her directions, she knows not where. When she should turn left, she stops with a stare. She looks all around, the compass and all, but she cannot find those directions at all. And instructions misguide her. When she's given a task, she bring you a towel when a dish was the ask. Recipes confuse and it all goes in one pot. And for low on the stove, she will turn it to hot. She's lost all her faces. They're not in her purse. Instead of a memory, things are a curse. Instead of her mate, she thinks I'm her brother. In place of herself, she's become someone other. She keeps on looking for the pieces she's lost. It's terrible to see such a terrible cost, to see such a life so terribly tossed. Alas, it is true that truly she's lost.
Thank you so much.
It's a long, long goodbye. It's a long, long goodbye when the thief does take your love away. One day she slips your guard right by, and things become to change. Your daily siege from then gets rough and storm besets your nerve. How can you fight a thief who operates by sleight? What law of nature grants this thief his mighty stealthy ways? How did you miss his furtive steps and her strange new little ways? If we could wind the clock right back and erase his filthy steps, if we could have a second chance to better live that first unnoticed day, But until we figure all this out, know this, essential you is what I love and who I love, and curse this thieving lout. But for all that, and for all that, throughout these tortured days, we'll seek and find some working ways to work through this and that. And every day I will say, I love you, always will. And a wee goodbye I'll say each and every day, I will. Until our final fare thee well, this will be our long, long goodbye. A hug, a kiss, and bless the time for us. Enjoy our long, long goodbye. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Sorry about the glitches.
No, so beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
Ugh. Kamal, I'm going to turn it over to you, please. Your turn to share. What exactly or how has your poetry helped you cope with your experience with dementia?
Thank you, Laurie. As mentioned earlier, I'm a nature lover and I had a penchant for words. I just love words and playing around and making them into poems. So I used to often go for a walk, and nature served as a refuge to me. So once, this diagnosis came, it was like going down a rabbit hole, and I told myself, no, I've got to get out there and go out and go for long walks and sit beside a park and get some solace, and it did. So I took a paper and a pad and a pencil, and I started writing poetry, more from the angle of why is my family suffering, why me, all that. So as I dug deeper and I wrote poems, it was a kind of relief to me. It gave me an inner stillness and kind of self-discovery, a healing power, and to be able to, I felt hope, and I felt that I'm able to accept it and able to cope with it. And I felt, that the humanity is embracing me and I'm going to cope with it. So the poetry was a big healer to me. It was like clinically it's been said that it helps to remove all the emotional kinks. And it came as a kind of a shield against all the curveballs, especially this current curveballs of a family member being diagnosed with dementia. So it gave me an inner contentment and hope. And with hope came optimism, and with optimism came that a sense of acceptance and cheerfulness, and to be able to embrace life to the fullest. Laurie, if you want, I can share one or two poems. So these poems are from my book, Still Waters, and the first poem is Never to Forget. They say it is Alzheimer's disease of the decades. I say, no, it is merely getting old. Brain fog hits us all. Why make a fuss? My granny, a professor from Harvard, how can she have Alzheimer's disease? You must be kidding. Not even in my wildest dreams. She may have, at times, forgotten the way back home from the grocery store round the bend. She may have kept the car keys in the sugar bowl, stumbled over simple sentences, slipped up on the date. It just seemed it was my dear granny getting old. But now, often, her eyes are blank as slate. Her smile flattens out. Her communication runs in small circles. Last year, she told me tales from Aesop's fables. Now, the doctor says she has Alzheimer's disease. I swallow hard. The light of the dying day peters out. The next poem is A Fractured Jigsaw Puzzle. Spring arrives and the cycle goes on, never ending. moment by moment, inch by inch. The past stretches like a giant canvas smudged with color thrown around, some rich in myriad hues, others faded, jaded with pangs of separation for someone who will never return. Maybe it is me, as I am someone else now. I move on, sucked into a cyclic vortex, the past closing in behind me, the present like a fractured jigsaw puzzle. Thank you for listening to my poems. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you as also for sharing. I I just I cannot thank you all enough for sharing so openly. Thank you. So now, you guys who are watching, it's your turn. We're going to share some suggestions and ideas to get you started. But like the dementia journey itself, your creative expression will be uniquely yours. But each of our presenters have some ideas for ways that you can get started. So, Kamal, if someone is interested in exploring their own creativity, how would you advise that they get started?
I have some poetry prompts, which I think Laurie, you could put them on the screen
Mhm.
share. If the audience could just go through them and use it as a lead in writing anything about that particular idea and making it more sensory. I also tell people to go for a walk, go out. As you know, nature is a big healer. I do not want you to commute. I would request you that you commune with it. It has its own language. If only we could decipher it. There's a poet in all of us, and there's a healing power in all of us. So it helps to give a kind of a stillness, and it helps to help you heal. So these poetry prompts will certainly, start you off writing. Take a pad or paper, pen with you, and you would find that they uplift your spirit, and it has for myself, it has taught me a lot of compassion and courage and helped me move forward with a more positive outlook. Other than going for a walk, I would also advise you or suggest that you join a writer's circle. There's tons of organizations and libraries where they offer these webinars, or you could personally go one-on-one if there's a library close by, and you could attend sessions where they teach you how to write poetry or teach you how to write per se. It need not be poetry. You could just write a small paragraph and then play around with it, try to look for adjectives and adverbs, and more sensory, to give it a more sensory touch to it. And then you will find after some time there will be, you'll have an imaginary touch to it. It's not that you require special poetic experience. It could be just about anybody, and try to make your words sing. Another idea would be like a supporters group where there are other people who are like wanting to write poetry, who are wanting to, like going for a walking circle could be there, and then some of you would like to sit beside a pond, or write about, get fond memories of your past, like plucking strawberries in the field with your mom. How did it feel like? So it could be a bit nostalgic, but certainly it'll give you a sense of relief and a more personal touch. So certainly anything creative, especially poetry, it's like two sides of a coin, and it's got strong healing powers. And so I would really suggest and request you try it out with your paper pen. We all have something hidden in us, and we all are hidden poets. That's my message to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, for those who are, you mentioned many of the ones that are on screen, but for those who have called in and are not seeing the slides, um, some of the prompts are to think about a song that you sang or loved to listen to in your childhood. Think about, does that evoke any memories? This was one, Kamal, you shared that I loved. Describe your favorite color without using its name.
Right.
Think about using water as an imagery or a metaphor or simile. Think about one of the following situations and how the situation makes you feel, and then try and describe. Sitting on a bench beside a still, lotus-filled pond. Sauntering in a forest. Watching the sunset while on a beach. Describe your favorite flower, maybe memories surrounding it. And as Kamal was saying, make it sensual and visual. Or think about your current situation. What do you find challenging right now? What brings you hope or joy or makes you sad? So yeah, all sorts of writing prompts that you can start use as a bit of a springboard into writing. Thank
Yes,
you, Kamal.
thank you, Laurie.
All right. Lorraine, you had shared some different ideas.
Yes, I think I mentioned earlier that I like to use photography to express myself. And I particularly like, especially if I have a short period of time to break away and I like to take my camera for walks, or nowadays I take my cell phone and I capture signs and symbols that represent feelings. For example, exposed and trampled tree roots, or flowing water softening the edges of rough rocks, or slugs in my garden slowly seeking nourishment. There's an amazing amount of things out there that just really echo our feelings and us. In the next piece that I had received that day some particularly sad news from home. And I went for a walk with my camera, and this flower captured my attention right away. And it's a prime example of how nature echoes human experience in so many ways. I think this flower was standing tall, strong, and beautiful at 1 minute or one day, and the next day it's bent over and drooping in heaviness of the frost. And it just echoed how sad I was feeling over the death of a relative of mine. So I find this a really gentle approach to touch on your feelings and to soothe myself. To just soothe myself, but it's especially gentle, and it doesn't take a lot of time. Whereas my other pieces, when I specifically work on a feeling, I do it over a period of days, and I keep it for a period of days, not forever, but yeah, that's what I'd like to share. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love that idea again, where going out with your camera, what catches your eye then may turn out like on one level it catches your eye, and on another level it may be when you look back at the photos that you're able to reflect on how taking that picture or that photo reflects what you're feeling. Yeah, I really like that.
You can always return to it, just like any of the pieces you do. You can always return to it and draw on it, or even see something different in it. It's just it's a wonderful resource out there.
Yeah, and when so many of us have those smartphones, cell phones, having cameras with us all the time allows us to be very responsive when something does catch our eye. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy, I think you had some ideas as well as to how people could get started.
Sure do. An easy way to get started with drawing or painting is, of course, to Google. Google something like getting started with art for adults, or just Google finger painting for adults. You can even look for finger painting for children or watercolor painting for children. That's where I go. That's my first choice. And just see what comes up. Look for children's art activity books and find something fun and easy that you might enjoy. For me, it started out with a book on finger painting that got me started, and it was from the library. You can find activity books at a bookstore, library, Toys R Us, or even a grocery store. And I can show you this. I can draw. You can see it's steps 1, 2, and 3. So just draw a circle, and then you put a nose in there, ears and feet, and a tail, and some eyes. In fact, we bought this at Superstore on Monday. And boy, did that come in, is that going to come in handy. My husband Lester did these yesterday. He made ladybugs. And this morning he made some dragonflies. And it's a good thing we have this book because he tested positive for COVID this morning. So we're going to have lots of time to have fun with art, hopefully. Buy the art supplies that you need. Just go to the dollar store. Remember to schedule art time for yourself. This is your time to be good to you. And just bravely begin. Hang up your piece of art for yourself and others to enjoy and to inspire you to do even more. Okay, now writing prompts. This was another UBC research art activity for us. So we were supposed to complete the beginning of the sentence. Life is like, if I could wave a magic wand, or a question I have is why? So if you like to paint a picture with words, writing a poem can be a relaxing and fun activity. A poem that rhymes is always fun. But remember, a poem does not need to rhyme. An easy way to begin writing a poem is by using a writing prompt. You can even go to Google and ask for writing prompts. They got lots of them there. Here's a poem that my husband wrote for the UBC research project using these prompts. Life is like a wise old owl in the woods. The older you get, the wiser you become. If I could wave a magic wand, I would go back to when I was 38 years old and met Cindy, who made my life full and happy. A question I have is why couldn't I have discovered Cindy in my younger years? And that's Lester's poem.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you, Lester. Herb, I'm going to pass it over to you.
For you writers out there, I find that writing begets writing. Writing is therapy, writing is profitable in so many levels. But casting way back, when my 3 sons were small, and there was nonstop rain outside, I gathered up a bunch of bar soaps and some non-lethal carving tools. And we proceeded to make the bar soaps into faces and heads. So that's a good hobby to have to take your mind off your troubles. And then many years later, when I was teaching in North Alberta, the teachers and I were having trouble with our principal and our superintendent, and we all wound up at my place one time. So I pulled out my supply of plasticine, and we molded the plasticine into heads, including one of our sons joined us in that, and he made a really good head. So that's a good hobby to have, and I must urge you, if you're so immersed into your working life, if you still have one when you're doing Alzheimer's caregiving, if you don't have a hobby or a special interest, you're going to be like my Ann was when she had to give up her cadets, which she ran for many, many years and had nothing to do. So I warn you, a quiet mind is a dying mind. So keep that mind going. And if you don't have a hobby or special interest, find one, make time for yourself, part of caregiving mantra, and it will save you in your afterlife, after Alzheimer's life. So keep on writing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And one of the things that you shared earlier that I really appreciated was you talked about how being involved with an education session got you started,
Yep.
and then in your support groups that you found that that was huge value and it helped you get up the courage to share with others. And and to hear others' stories, how valuable that was.
Oh, the
And
support group was part of the saving me from depression. That it was invaluable. And a tip for you people who are still in the Alzheimer's journey and haven't discovered Teepa Snow, discover Teepa Snow. Another absolute gem. She gives videos how to do this and that, how to handle Alzheimer's people in various stages of their dementia. Just a most important place. And join a group on Facebook, for example. There are lots of them. I still belong to one called Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. and we still, I'm 6 going on 7 years since I lost my Ann, and I'm still into that, and it still, eases the burden, and it still inspires more writing. So one thing leads to another, and you will find life after Alzheimer's. Please do.
so powerful. Thank you. We all hope that we've encouraged you to find unique ways to relieve some of your caregiving stress. And Sarah, I see you popping Teepa Snow's website into the chat. So thank you for that. Artistic and creative
Yes.
activities can help you understand and reflect about yourself, which is a way to embrace self-care.
Yep.
By sharing your art with others, you also receive community support, encouragement, and inspiration so that they and you don't feel alone, isolated, and withdrawn.
Absolutely necessary.
Cindy mentioned the Art Making Space research project. I've put the screenshot of their website on the slide. And so I really encourage you to explore artmakingspace.com as a way to both learn more about living well with dementia and a way to kick off your own creativity. There is an activities section that prompts you to write, to share your own artwork, or to comment on the art of the day. And as we've been mentioning throughout today, in today's helpful resource document, you'll find links to Art Making Space. Before we wrap up today, I want to share a song written by care partner, retired PE teacher, and musician Neil Thornham. Neil was inspired to write this song, You Look the Same, after a video call with a longtime friend who was diagnosed with dementia. Neil says his song captures his feelings during his conversation with his friend and his imagined feelings of his friend in the latter part of the song. As it plays, you'll see again some of the pieces that our guests have talked about, as well as other images that Mario Gregario, another person with lived experience, has shared with us.
You look the same, but you don't know my name. There's still that smile, though you're so far away. We used to be so close. What I miss the most, remember times we had, now you can't recall. They're locked away, and you can't climb the walls. I see the sparkle when I catch your eye, only for a moment, can't get you back, no matter how I try. I watch you slip away before my very eyes, as I try to hold back the tears. Don't want you to see me cry, so I hide behind my smile and pretend it's all okay, and we laugh and smile like we used to. Laugh and smile like we used to. You seem so lost, how can I find you? Somehow if only I could remind you, we could laugh and smile. We could laugh and smile like we used to. What I miss the most, now I can recall. I roll back the years, today's behind the wall. I look the same and think that it's okay, and we laugh and smile like we used to. Laugh and smile like we used to. You look the same, but I don't know your name.
As always, if you have questions about today's presentation or about anything related to dementia, please don't hesitate to call the First Link Dementia Helpline, which is available Monday to Friday from 9 to 8 at 1-800-936-6033. I want to take a couple of minutes and just say thank you so much to each of you, Herb, Kamal, Lorraine, Cindy, for sharing so open-heartedly today. I too found today very, very inspiring. Cindy, listening to you talk about the cool squishy paint, I am going to go and try that. I just love it. And the photographs, Lorraine and Kamal and Herb, both of you speak so movingly and eloquently about the power of written words. And
Thank you.
I really appreciate all of your time. So thank you all very, very much.
Yes.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's-
Bye, everyone.
It was a very good session. Thank you.
Thank you.